Welcome to the Share Chair, where we learn from listening. Meg Rice here. She's a sophomore at Loyola University. Can you tell us a little bit about your major and what you study here at Loyola?
Yeah, so originally I was biochemistry major, pre-med.
Okay.
And after deciding that was just going to be too much school for me, I decided to switch to exercise science and pick up a minor in bioethics. So right now I'm still on the pre-med track, but I'm also pre-physical therapy if I decide to do that instead.
I know that you're really big into service.
Yeah.
You're an orientation, that's putting it lightly.
Yeah.
You're an orientation leader during the summer. You Loyola for Chicago as well.
Mm-hmm.
I believe I remember you mentioning that. And just, can you talk about just service?
This semester in particular, I'm going to be leading a group from Loyola for Chicago, which is like Loyola's basically like service community type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be going once a week to Misericordia, which is a home for adults with developmental disabilities. And we'll go there once a week. And my group in particular will be doing like modified yoga because a lot of the patients there are like wheelchair bound or have like limited mobility. And so this really helps like almost in like a physical therapy sense to like remain like mobile and just kind of get them like to keep moving because that's really, really important.
Yeah.
So I'll be doing that, and then I'm also going to be doing volunteering with Chicago Public Schools too through service learning, so that'll be really, really cool too. Helping with recess and sports, either after school or like during recess time, and just kind of like working with the kids there because Chicago Public Schools have pretty poor funding because it is like it's a much lower income rate.
That is a big commitment too, once a week, especially with your pre-med, pre-health sciences, like that's a lot of work, like you said. So what is it that like draws you to service and that like makes you willing to just commit to it so heavily?
I never think about like having to go to service, like go do service as like a chore or like keeping me from doing homework. Like for me, it's kind of a way to like regroup my thoughts and like I don't know, it motivates me to do better in school because like the people that I'm working with, those are the people that I want to be working with, like with my career. And so it just like it kind of motivates me and makes me realize like how fortunate I am to have been born into the family that I was born into, have had the education that I've had, to be an able-bodied person. Like it just kind of motivates me to keep using all of my like privileges to help those who are less privileged. And so doing like weekly service is like an easy commitment for me because it's something that honestly I think like has a greater impact on me than it does the people that I'm like helping or like doing service for because like they don't really need me there, but like seeing them and being inspired by them is a bigger deal than me just like being there and like helping them do whatever they need to do.
So it's like almost more beneficial for you than it is for that's so awesome. Was there ever an experience that you had growing up or in high school or even in just your first year at Loyola with service that kind of opened your eyes to service, or were you always like very into volunteering?
I was raised by a family that loves service.
Okay.
When I was younger, my neighbor, like it was the first house that I ever lived in, I was like a little itty bitty baby up until like age 4, and my best friend had Down syndrome. Like she lived across the street from me, we played all the time. And as I got older, I started to notice like the differences between us, but like being around her made me feel like good. Like I mean, when you're a kid, like you don't really care about anything. You're like, I just want to play with my blocks, like whatever. And so like as I got older, like I started to realize the differences, and we kept in touch. Like after I moved into our new house, and my family has always been very involved in like service with like people who've like recently like immigrated to the U.S., like helping them assimilate, helping them get their citizenship, and that's like been something that my family's been really involved in. My dad is like the president of this huge charity in Minnesota called Bob Allison Ataxia Research Center, and they do research for like neurodegenerative disorders like Parkinson's, ALS, Lou Gehrig's, ataxia, and so like that's something that's like kind of been ingrained in me, and something that I think my whole family really appreciates because we are a very we're a very lucky family to be in the position that we're in, and so I've always been taught to kind of not take that for granted. I don't know, everyone's story is unique, and it's really it's really valuable to hear about everyone else's experiences because even someone that could have grown up next door to you and gone to the same school and done everything as you did could have a completely different experience.
Yeah.
Just based on like who they are as a person and how their brain works. And
So what is the value for you personally in getting to know another person? I know you said you can like learn from it, but what can it do to help community and society right now in today's current situation?
a lot of like issues that, and obviously I'm not very knowledgeable because like I know nothing about politics, but like from what like in my experience and like who I am as a person, I think a lot of conflict happens from lack of understanding. And I think that a lot of people are scared of what they don't know, and if they understood what they didn't know, they wouldn't be so scared of it.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I think that when you learn about people who have different experiences from you, you start to get a better view of the world and get a better view of like, I don't know, kind of how people work, and you can be a more empathetic person when you have those experiences with other people.
Brought you from Minnesota to Loyola. I think I remember you saying it wasn't your top choice.
Yeah, I had originally applied to like 11 schools, and Loyola was not one of them.
Oh.
And then I got like put on a wait list for most of my top schools. And so I was like, you know what, I want to like still have options. I didn't want to stay in Minnesota because I wanted to like expand my horizons and like you know, see more of the world. And so I decided to apply to Loyola in April, like literally 2 weeks before like decision day. And I applied there and I got accepted, and then I went to like admitted students gathering or something one weekend and did a tour and literally just like fell in love with the school and its mission, and realized that like the reason why I didn't get accepted into any of those other schools was because like this was my home and this is where I was meant to be.
Yeah. It might have been because this is where you're meant to be. Do you believe in the like everything happens for a reason type thing?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I think that sometimes like what I always tell myself is like sometimes you have to do the wrong thing to get to the right place, and sometimes you have to like sometimes things that you really, really want or things that you feel like you need, like you don't get those things because there's a better like plan in place. And while you do have like free will, obviously, like it's just like the path that you take to like get to that end point, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that like, you know, you can make all these choices, and even if they're the wrong choices, you're still going to end up where you're supposed to be, and it's still going to be a learning experience if you allow it to be.
Remember that you mentioned over orientation that one of your best friends had passed away your senior year of high school.
My friend Rachel, she had brain cancer when she was a younger kid, when she was in elementary school, and she was in remission for a really long time, and beginning of my junior year, she got re-diagnosed with terminal brain cancer in her brainstem, and it was inoperable, so they couldn't, you know, extract it because the risk was too high. So she just did like chemotherapy, you know, the normal thing, just to like prolong her time. But in the end of September, my senior year, she passed away. Like she was the football manager, and that was like her thing. Like she called like the football guys her boys, because they were, and they absolutely adored her. But at halftime, her temperature was getting really, really high, and so her parents brought her home, and like right as they got her home and later in her bed, she had passed away. But yeah, and that was the only football game we lost that year, and so we always say that it was because we were doing really, really poorly by halftime, and so we were saying that Rachel didn't want to see us lose because we didn't really win the state championship, which again is not the biggest deal because it's high school football, but it was a really big deal to our school because of like what it meant for us.
Yeah.
Just kind of like things don't always turn out the way you want to, and it's not always fair, but like it still makes you close, and it makes you close with everyone around you. And
that's a really hard thing to have to deal with. I mean, it's hard for any age of person to have to deal with, but especially when you're in high school, I feel like it can really affect you. And so was there any, like, what was a huge takeaway? What did you learn from Rachel at all?
She was literally the most incredible person I've ever met. Like, I've never met a person that was, like, able to bring out the good in people. Like, every single person she met was a better person because she met them, even if it was for half a second. There were so many people, like, from surrounding communities that were affected by her, even though they had never met her. Like, I don't know of anyone that's ever had that power. And it was just by her being herself. And so, I mean, the most important thing I learned from her is that, like, you really can't love too much. Like, she loved every single person. She would never hurt a fly. Like, she was so sweet, but she was also, like, so spunky and funny and witty and, like, just always had a smile on her face. Like, her positivity is kind of like the thing I would take away, and like, you can never love people too much because you will get all of that love in return. Yeah. Like, she was the most loved person I've ever met, but she was also the person that loved more than anyone I've ever met.
Do you have advice for anybody like if there was just a person sitting across from you, not even me, just anyone who's random who you don't know, like what piece of advice would you give them, like human to human, you wanting them to like try and better themselves? Like what would you tell them, or just a person?
I mean, obviously, like, you have to love yourself before you love others, but also just kind of reminding yourself, like, I try to be as not judgmental as possible, and obviously that's sometimes hard to do. Like, it's really easy to just like see someone and like make a snap judgment, but more than anything, I think, like, never be afraid to like keep trying with people, and never be afraid to like keep loving people even when they don't want you to, because like it's really hard to like feel alone, especially when you're like starting college. Like, you don't want to ever feel alone, and like making sure that people know how much you mean to them. Yeah. I do this thing with my big, where like every single day we will like do things to actively appreciate each other, even if it's just like I text them and like, hi, I love you, have a great day. Like, just like always remembering to appreciate people who are around you while they're around you, because I feel like a lot of times we get caught up in our own crap and then forget that like everyone around us has helped us so much. And I think just like saying a little thank you to them, or just being like, hey, it's really cool that you did this, like just remembering that, because like you do need to love yourself first, but like everyone around you loves you too, and you need to love them too.
Thank you so much, Meg, for being on the Share Chair podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Share Chair. Stay tuned next week for a new episode.